welcome everybody. My name is Stacy Leonard. I'm the events coordinator here at CRC and happy to welcome you to our live stream episode 8. We're excited to have so many people joining us and just hoping that you're continuing to stay healthy and safe during these challenging times. For those who are new to this event, LiveStream is our bi-weekly lunchtime presentation series that we launched this spring, where we bring our work and our rivers to you. Today, we're delighted to bring a special guest from Estuary Magazine. This is the first magazine dedicated to the life of the Connecticut River. We'll learn how the magazine came to be, from conception to implementation. We're going to hear from a well-known naturalist, Wick Griswold, who I will introduce shortly. First, I want to share some updates about our series and a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. So this is our last live stream for summer, and we're going to take a pause in September while we launch our biggest event of the year, the Source to Sea Cleanup. And I invite you to get dirty for cleaner rivers by jumping over to ctriver.org/cleanup after the presentation for all the details. And that will be a great event that anyone can do wherever they are, together and apart. And we're going to conclude that with a big shindig on September 30th. So you can see all that information later. And I'll be sharing all these links in our follow-up email after this presentation. Then we'll be back in October for a couple new live streams that will connect the cleanup and the trash that we find to our advocacy work. So we'll be talking about plastics and tires and how you can get involved and learn more about advocating to get rid of these items from our rivers in the first place. And then a special treat for everyone on this call and for all CRC friends, members, volunteers. Estuary Magazine is offering a free issue of the magazine to anybody who signs up. So I'll be sharing a link on how you can get that as well. So a couple of quick items on Zoom. If you're new to this, we're using the Q&A today. Please type in any questions you have. We'll be answering them at the end of the presentation. And the Q&A box should be at the bottom of your screen. You'll notice your own video and mic are turned off just so we can have a quiet conversation with Wick. But we do really, really, really want your questions, so please type them in. And this is being recorded for later access on ctriver.org/livestream. So you can watch again. It's also on our YouTube channel, and I will be sharing those links as well. So if you need any technical help, we have a leaky behind the scenes. So if you can't hear or for some reason you can't connect, you can call a leaky and she can help troubleshoot. And that's our office number, 413-772-2020 extension 207. Okay, that should do it for that stuff. So I want to introduce our presenter. Wick Griswold is with us today. He's an emeritus professor of sociology at the University of Hartford, where he teaches the sociology of the Connecticut River watershed. How appropriate. He is also the Commodore of the Connecticut River Drifting Society. So I hope he'll explain a little more about what that's all about. He's the author of 5 books on the history of this Connecticut River and a staff writer for Estuary Magazine. So I think we're in for a real treat having Wick today. So I'd like for Wick to take it away. And I'll be back for the Q&A. Thanks, Wick.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks for your interest in the Connecticut River and everything you do to make sure that the Connecticut River flows cleanly and wonderfully. It's a pleasure to be interacting with you. I've always been interested in your organization and have worked with them in the past. And it's exciting for me to be able to talk a little bit today about the wonderful new Estuary Magazine that I've been privileged to get in on the ground floor of, right? Estuary Magazine is the only magazine that's ever been dedicated totally to the Connecticut River. And it's the brainchild of a gentleman from Old Lyme, Connecticut, named Dick Shriver. And Dick has been a devotee of the Connecticut River for a long time. He lives down on Pilgrim Cove. And he decided that he wanted to expand his interest and share his interests and develop other interests in the Connecticut River. And amazingly, in an age where print magazines seem to be going out of style, he decided to buck that trend and has put together a wonderful print and also an online edition. But the print edition is just a marvel of photography and graphics, and is a real it's a collector's item, even though it's less than a year old. The magazine itself is quarterly, and its first issue was in spring this year, and the summer issue, which there's a cover of right now, is been out for a while, and the fall issue will be out next month. So I would encourage you, and since you can now get a free copy, I would certainly encourage you to go forth and do that, because it's just a splendid magazine. And I don't say that just because I write for it, really. I mean, it has a variety of articles. It has a really eclectic approach to the river. And when it started out, I said, "Hey, Dick, how come you named it Estuary? Isn't that a little bit place specific?" And he said, "Well, you know, the estuary is the place where all the water from the entire river ultimately passes through. So it's the spot that really touches every aspect of the river and every place of the river." And that's been his overarching philosophy in terms of presenting and collecting materials, that it's just not the estuary. It's from the inception, from the font that begins the flow up on the Canadian border, all the way down. And it's a really inclusive effort. And I would strongly recommend, if you are at all interested in writing for the magazine, if you have a particular interest that you'd like to share, please get in touch, estuarymagazine.com, because we're always looking for new people, new ideas, and it's not necessarily any specific topic. It's you know, wide open, totally eclectic. May I have another slide, please? Leaky? Or no? There you go. Okay, this is an article from the first issue, and you'll notice that there's a thin blue line down the middle of the image here, and that's because it's a photograph that was actually from the magazine, and that thin blue line was the page fold. And the Meet the Connecticut River is essentially the greeting that Estuary Magazine puts forth to anyone that's interested in it. You know, just this image shows the river itself. It shows bird life. It shows mammals. It shows fish. You know, so it covers the science and conservation aspects of the river, and it's a wonderful effort on the part of the magazine to be all inclusive. You know, I mean, the Connecticut River, as we all know, is one of the true treasures of New England. In many ways, it's the most important and most prominent river in New England, and its people and its watershed have played an important role and continue to play an important role. And if Estuary Magazine can help get the word out, can help get knowledge, can help get information, can help inspire people to be interested in and active in river-related issues, then it certainly has fulfilled its promise. And yeah, that's the Connecticut River needs its own magazine, and now it certainly has one. May I have another slide, please, Aliki? Yeah, this is again from the first issue, and it lays out what the magazine is trying to do. Right, it certainly has a strong emphasis on science and conservation, and one of the things that I have seen in the first two issues is that it's able to make science explainable and make science accessible to non-scientists. That the quality of the writing is such that some complex issues can be made understandable in a very, very real way. That we've already just in two issues, there's been articles about the Vermont Center for Ecological Studies, the Stebbins Wildlife Refuge, the estuary itself had a large workup in the last issue. There's been articles about water quality, and I think that they will continue to proliferate as further issues come down the pike. Certainly, wildlife is an extraordinary part of the Connecticut River. There's been, just in terms of mammals, there's already been an article on bears. In terms of birds, the murmuration of the swallows. There's certainly been some words about eagles, osprey. It's a magazine that responds to the nature, that responds to the environmental life, the biota of the river. There's been already, just in the first two issues, there's been articles on shad, which is sort of the signature fish of the Connecticut River. We'll talk about it in a little bit. There's been an article on sturgeon. And as you can see, that we also do stuff on history, which is sort of my bailiwick. We'll talk a little bit about a couple of the articles that I've already done, and there's an emphasis on not only making history known, but connecting the past and the present, and hopefully turning that into a better future for the river. It's important to know who we were in order to understand who we are. At least that's certainly what I think, and that's one of the things that we're trying to accomplish with Estuary Magazine, is to give us a sense of place, a sense of cultural, a sense of history in terms of understanding where we are in the present, in our relationship between human beings and the natural environment, human beings and the Connecticut River. May I have another slide, please, Aliki? Also, there's an emphasis on present day stuff, recreation, lifestyle, and people. There's already in the past, just first couple of issues, there's been articles about kayaking, about whitewater stuff, about fly fishing. It seems that the possibilities of recreating on the Connecticut River are expanding all the time. It's been sort of interesting that since the plague struck, there's been a tremendous increase in boating activity on the Connecticut River. That people have found that boating is a sort of a fun way to social distance, and there's been a proliferation of powerboats, canoes, and kayaks on the river. So certainly there's the sense of recreation as an important aspect of the Connecticut River. There's been there was an article in the past issue on fly fishing, and interestingly, not only are there articles on how to fish, how to catch fish, where to catch fish, but in terms of what to do with the fish once you catch them, right? There's been a couple of really interesting things that I've learned about the preparation of shad and trout, and for me that's always been a plus, because shad has been a staple of the Connecticut River for millennia, and it's been certainly an important part of my spring rituals is the eating of shad. You know, there are articles about the people that are interested, people that connect, people that work with the Connecticut River. There's pieces so far have been published about artists, about preservationists, about photographers. It's a sense of that bringing the people and the river together in a very, very real and meaningful way of making those connections, both between humans and humans and humans and the natural environment. May I have another slide, please, Aliki? Oh yeah, here again you can see the thin blue line, but this became sort of a joke among the early progenitors of Estuary Magazine, when they said, "Oh no, dear God, not another picture of a bird," right? But you'll notice this is a fairly spectacular picture of a bird, and it speaks to the quality of the photography and the quality of the production values that go into the magazine, the color work, the design is just spectacular. And that of course there are pictures of birds, but they are wonderful, terrific, super pictures of birds, and it's a way of experiencing visually, right, a lot of what of the information that you're internalizing intellectually too. So it becomes a double pleasure and a learning experience at the same time. May I have another slide, please, Luki? Ah, yes, Shad. We just mentioned Shad a little bit. This is a painting of the famous Shad Shack in Haddam, Connecticut. And shad, again, is the Connecticut River shad, is one of the defining fish of the river. It's something that's been utilized, something that's been fished for, something that's served as food, something that is served as fertilizer, something that has been smoked and salted, and was an export product of the colonial years. It's something that the indigenous people used for thousands and thousands of years to live on the river. And it's also a really, really tasty delight. It's a wonderfully succulent eating fish, and hopefully, and this is something else that I'm hoping that the Estuary Magazine might stimulate, is the continuance of a commercial shad fishery on the river, because given the problems that people had this spring, there was very, very little shad available, and hopefully the commercial fishing, the gill netting of shad, will be something that will continue, and hopefully that'll be something that Estuary Magazine can be a part of. I know it's something that I'm really, really interested in, just from a selfish point of view, because I really, really like to eat shad, and it's delicious. May I have another slide, Aliki, please? There's the Connecticut River Conservancy's very own Andy Fisk out doing some field work. Looks like he's working on some water quality issues there. He's looking very serious, very intent on his equipment, and it's nice to have the collaboration between Estuary Magazine and the Connecticut River Watershed Conservancy, the Watershed Conservancy, that is, kind enough to put this little presentation together. So hopefully it'll be a way of continuing the good work of both organizations, and a way of expanding the educational and cultural opportunities that both organizations are committed to promulgating. May I have another slide, please, Aliki? Okay, so there's the first article that I published in Estuary Magazine, and it was about the ferries of the Connecticut River. When the Europeans showed up, it was necessary for them to figure out a way to get their horses and wagons across the river, so they developed a ferry service extremely early on. The first boat ride I ever took was on the Rocky Hill to Glastonbury Connecticut River Ferry, which happens to be the oldest continuously operating ferry service in the United States. It started in 1655, and hopefully in the next few years we'll be celebrating its 400th anniversary. But ferries have been a part of Connecticut River lore for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's nice that they still continue to be. There's a ferry down in between Chester and Headline, Connecticut, that runs just underneath the ramparts of Gillette Castle. And if you're ever down that way, I strongly recommend taking a little ride across, because some of the scenic views that are available are just breathtaking. And it's sort of nice that the ferries become a piece of living history that still continues into the 21st century, even though they lose a little money for the state. That sometimes there are things that are more important than money, like culture, for example, and history. May I have another slide, please, Leaky? Okay, so we go from a beautiful vista to a not so beautiful vista. But again, this is one of the places where Estuary Magazine and the Connecticut River Conservancy intersect, right? That there's a strong commitment on the part of both organizations to make the river increasingly cleaner, and to make the river as clean and pristine as it possibly can be. And I know that the Source to Sea cleanup is coming up, and I certainly would advocate for anyone that can possibly do it to participate. I've and my students have worked with the Source to Sea for many years, and prior to that, I organized and administered cleanups on the river in the watershed for over 40 years. So certainly I'm well committed to that, because I remember as a lad, there were times when it was very difficult to be within 100 yards of the river, because the stench was just so overwhelming. And in my capacity as Commodore of the Connecticut River Drifting Society, we have been going down canoe camping down the river for the past 45 years. And I must say that the quality of the water continues to get better and better and better. And it's through the efforts of the organizations like the Connecticut River Conservancy, and certainly the Clean Water Act of 1972 had a great deal to do with it. So I would strongly, advocate for a cleaner river, as I'm sure we'd all like to see and like to paddle on, like to swim in, like to catch fish out of. So yeah, let's clean that little baby up, no doubt about it. May I have another slide, please, Leaky? Lady Fenwick. This is a historical profile that I have in the spring, the summer issue of Estuary. And if I had a time machine, I would go back and would say wonderful things. I would bring flowers to Lady Fenwick just because she's like my favorite historical personage. She came over from England with her husband, Colonel Fenwick, and moved into the fort at the mouth of the Connecticut River. And she brought her entire English garden with her and replanted it in Connecticut. It's why her husband designed the state seal of Connecticut that has the grape leaves on it and the little Latin saying that says, "Those who are transplanted will sustain," right? Because she transplanted and ultimately the English colonists were sustained. But she was this amazing, one of the first European women in North America. And she could grow food, she could grow plants that healed. She was a strong friend of the indigenous people. She respected them and earned their respect, and they shared plant lore. She could ride a horse excellently. She was a terrific markswoman. She could row, she could sail, she could sing madrigals. She could do it all. And rumor had it she was drop dead gorgeous, but there are unfortunately no pictures of her that survive. But you could find a lock of her hair at the Old Saybrook Historical Society. And if you're ever down in Saybrook, I recommend you visit her tomb, which is one of the I think most important historical sites in the United States. And it was a pleasure for me to be able to write about her and to tell her story a little bit. May I have another slide, please, Leaky? This is also a piece that I had in the summer issue of Estuary. I tried to keep a little bit of gender balance here. I wrote one about a woman, so I had to write one about a man. And the guy I selected was John Legerd, who made the most famous and lasting drift in Connecticut River history. He's a very, very interesting character. He was the son of a sea captain a Connecticut sea captain, and wound up as a young fellow being one of the first students at Dartmouth College. He got in a sulky and made his way up to New Hampshire, but didn't take well to college life, and he went off in the middle of a semester and lived a winter with indigenous people up in the far northern woods. And when he got back to college, he decided that he was going to go on an epic drift. So he felled a large pine tree and dug it out, turned it into a canoe, and paddled it down the Connecticut River. The Legerd Canoe Club from Dartmouth still every spring replicates his journey down the Connecticut River. And he didn't stop there. He wound up going to Long Island and signing on as a seaman, and found himself in London, where he got impressed into the British Navy and wound up being a Marine, a British Marine, and sailing with Captain Cook on his third voyage, and wound up having a series of adventures. He was one of the first Anglo-Americans to be on the west coast of North America. And he decided that when he was out there that there was an opportunity to get sea otters from there and take them to China and turn them into an economic boom. And it didn't work out for him, but ultimately other people did it. He found himself in Paris trying to sell this idea, and he was wound up with like Benjamin Franklin and John Paul Jones and a whole bunch of really important expatriate Americans at the time. And he decided that he was going to take off and walk across Russia, go across the Bering Strait, and then walk across all of North America. And he started out on that adventure and got 1,400 miles into Russia, where Catherine the Great decided that he was a spy for the French and had him arrested, and he wound up back in London and found that he had an opportunity to lead an expedition to the mouth of the Nile River. And it was during that time that he got sick and eventually became ill and was buried on the banks of the Nile, which is a river that's almost as prominent as the Connecticut in world history. So it was fun to write about him, and it's fun to see that connection between his adventure and the Legerd Canoe Club out of Dartmouth, which has become a leader in environmental issues and sponsoring paddling races and other drifting activities. So it's fun for me to be able to connect historical figures with the present day. And I think that if you have the inclination, I certainly would recommend getting that free issue of Estuary Magazine. And hopefully that will inspire you to subscribe to either the print or the online edition, because you certainly would be welcome, A, to read it, and B, to contribute should you be so inclined. I think it's an exciting new opportunity for us to take knowledge of the river to new and greater heights. And I certainly am thankful to the Connecticut River Conservancy for giving me the opportunity to speak today about the Estuary Magazine and some of my particular interests, and hopefully they will meld with some of your particular interests. So anyway, thank you very much, Stacy, for hosting this event. And if anyone has any questions, I guess you can send them to Stacy, and she will pass them on to me. This is how you can get in touch with Estuary, which would be www.estuarymagazine.com. Wick Griswold would be my Facebook page. Griswold@hartford.edu would be my email, should you decide you'd like to get in touch with me personally. And again, I would welcome you to do so. We could share some ideas and a few smiles, hopefully. But anyway, thank you very much, Stacy, and hopefully there'll be some questions.
Wonderful. We have a couple of questions come in so far, and I invite people to add more to the Q&A box. So first, someone did want to call to our attention that the Karuna Center in Amherst is hosting a webinar tonight called The Connecticut River Valley as Native Place. And
cool.
If you look in the Q&A, I shared a link for you to register. Myself and a few other CRC staff are planning to attend, and it looks to be a great presentation with Dr. Lisa Brooks from Amherst College. here's more of a comment than a question, but there's some huge interest in what the community of faith is doing. Check out St. Anne's Parish in Old Lyme. Do you have any connection to that, Wick, or anything?
Well, it's right down the road from me. I don't work with them per se. I know that when the recent tropical storm came through, they had a huge tree come down that just missed their church. So I think that they have a strong influence on whatever supernatural powers take charge of such things. But no, I don't work with them, per se. There's the Roger Tory Peterson Audubon is very active in this area. I don't know if they work directly with St. Anne's or not.
Well, maybe oh, sorry, I was just going to say maybe the person who wrote the question could add a link or share some other information that you want us to all know about.
Sure, definitely. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Wick.
Oh, no, that's all right. I did a talk a few years ago on pirates at the Congregational Church in Old Lyme, if that counts to about community of faith in the Connecticut River. That was sort of fun to put on my little pirate outfit and go yo ho ho in a church. That was exciting for me.
Okay, great. Here's a question about the ferries. Are the ferries on the Connecticut River at the actual places that Native Americans used to cross the river as well?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they are, only because they're usually at places where that there's water, that's not too shallow, and that the banks are not that far apart. And the Native Americans, essentially used dugout canoes to transport themselves and their stuff. But when the Europeans came, they brought the big draft animals with them, and they had to figure out a way to get horses and wagons across the river, so that they had to build these little, floating scows, floating platforms. But they certainly, followed the trails and the paths that the indigenous people had been using for thousands of years. And the ferry sites became, natural places for them to take over. Once steam engines came into being, more and more ferry sites proliferated, because they didn't necessarily have to be the closest points. That they could, as long as there was enough water to float them, the ferries could go a little bit farther up and down the river. And it's been sort of interesting. I did a book on the Connecticut River ferries, and it's been sort of interesting to follow their progression and their history, and the fact that we still have them, even though they perform more of a cultural service than an actual transportation service now. It's good that our society has, kept them going and continues to keep them going.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to ride on one of them. I've never been.
Oh, by all means, it's a real bargain, and they're both beautiful boat rides, and they're fun. It's a good thing to do.
Great. The next question is, how far up the Connecticut River have you seen wild rice growing?
How far up the Connecticut River have I personally seen wild rice growing?
Or do you know about?
I see the wild rice that I'm most familiar with is in Seldon Creek. The Connecticut River Drifting Society camps every year on Seldon Island, and we've noticed for the past decades and decades that the wild rice continues to grow and proliferate there. I don't really recall mentioning it or seeing it much above there, but I certainly know there's a ton of it there. And I would strongly recommend, camping on Seldon Island if you have an interest in canoeing and camping.
Right. Many great camping spots thanks to the Connecticut River Paddlers Trail too.
Yes, and there are more of them, and they're great. It's a good thing to do. To be able to, pull your little canoe or kayak up and put up your little tent and enjoy a fine evening.
Great.
Eat some trout and shad.
A couple of people are wondering about your connection to other Griswolds and Old Lyme and Griswold Point specifically.
Griswold Point. Should they have any interest, I highly recommend a book. It's called Griswold Point, and it was written by a guy named Wick Griswold, and it delineates the history of the point here. It's sort of a real connection to me because ultimately Matthew Griswold the First, right, we're up to Matthew Griswold the 12th now, but Matthew Griswold the First got this land because he ultimately built the tomb for Lady Fenwick. And our family still maintains her tomb since 1647 till now, right? We've been taking care of her resting place. And we're down here on the point, and if someone is interested in the family history, that would be a book that I wrote a few years ago that sort of laid out at least what I know about it. And if they're interested, it's put out by the History Press, and sure.
We'll share a link to how you can look for some of Wick's books also in that email that's going to be filled with many links for you to all check out.
Great.
Is the article on Legerd in the archives, or how can people find past issues?
Actually, as soon as a new issue comes out, the previous one goes into the archives. So I guess that one will be archived next month. And
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Have you visited King Island in Enfield?
Yes, I have visited King Island in Enfield, right? Both going up and paddling up and paddling down the river. It was always a nice spot to have lunch. And, we usually go up as far as the Enfield Falls and then turn around and come back. And King Island is a nice little spot. I don't think there's much water up there right now, right? It's been so dry that the river's been low. There's a couple of places on the Watershed that we had wanted to paddle, but there just hasn't been any water there. We wanted to go into the Quabic River, but no water.
Yeah.
Fortunately, down here, there's plenty of good places to paddle.
Thank you. The person who wrote earlier just shared a link for stainannsparish.org, so people can check that out. Is Estuary or CRC going to jump into video production? CRC does not have any plans for that outside of what we're trying to do right now with this webinar series and other ways just to stay connected during this challenging time when we can't be more physically together. We do have a YouTube channel with lots of other videos on it if you are interested in exploring other topics. But Wick, can you answer for Estuary?
I haven't heard any noise about going video at Estuary, although it's an intriguing idea. If anybody is interested, I did Stephen Jones and I actually did a video on the ferry boats of the Connecticut River, which you can find on Vimeo or PBS. That's the only video stuff that I've done, that's specific to the river. But I might have to bring that up. That's a good idea.
Great. What is the name of the island that wild rice grows around, and what is the group that camps on that island?
Seldon Island, is the name of is the name of the island. It's on the Connecticut River, and there's a creek that goes around it, which is again a highly recommended paddle. And the group that I know that camps on it is the Connecticut River Drifting Society. But I've camped on it with excuse me, Girl Scout groups and Boy Scout groups that I've led down there. But in terms of groups that camp there, those are the only three that I know of for sure. Although there are, campsites available, you can get them, you can reserve them online. It's only $5 per person, so it's a real bargain, and they're only accessible by boat. So as far as I'm concerned, the Cedars on Seldon Island is as nice a campsite as you could find in the state of Connecticut. It's just a glorious place to camp. I bring my students there when I do the river class. We do a camp down the river thing, and that's always their favorite spot. And because it's haunted, and I get to tell ghost stories around the fire and scare the little devils, That's always fun.
Intriguing. I think it's Steve who wrote earlier about the St. Anne's group, says in 2017, 50 canoes, not all at once, paddled source to sea. And there's lots of pictures and video.
Mm-hmm.
People want to take a look at that St. Anne's
Parish. I
remember
link. That. Yeah. There was they did have a community of faith-based, right? I remember reading articles about it as they were going down the river.
Also, it's a good time for me to put in a little plug. We have a place on our website where folks who have made a source to sea journey can tell their story and share photos. Mm-hmm. Yep. So if you go to ctriver.org, I will share that link as well. I can't think of it offhand, but it's the Paddler's Trail recognition page. So Dick Schreiber is on the line, and he's clarifying about the archives of Estuary, that subscribers can access all the issues online and can access all but the most recent issue. I think that's what you spoke to, Wick.
Yes.
And we have precious print copies in my basement, he says. Thank you, Dick. So this next question from Don: in your paddling journey, have you seen any quote unquote river monsters, big sturgeon, etc.?
If you read my History of the Connecticut River book, I did a little section on Connecticut River monsters. And the one that is most famous down this way is called Connie. And in a way, I hate to tell this story, but I was sitting at a campsite in Herd Park with my class, my Connecticut River class, and our outfitter is a guy named Scott Larkham, and we had gotten up earlier than the college kids and were starting to rattle some pots and pans around. But before we did, we were having a quiet moment, sitting on the bank over the river. And what we saw, and we both saw it together, was a classic sea serpent swimming down the center of the river. And it's like seeing a UFO, it's like, well, how do you even begin to tell this story? But that's what we saw. And we were both—
How big?
Oh, big. I would say that the head was like the picture of the Loch Ness Monster that either happened or didn't happen. It was like that. And I'd say the head was probably 6-8 feet out of the water, and it was pre-cell phones, and our cameras were in our tents. And we knew that if we ran back, by the time we got back, they'd be gone. So we just sat and watched it, swim down the river and into the mist. So it was early in the morning. We hadn't even had our coffee yet, so we were probably as stable as we were going to be the whole day. But that's what we saw, and that's our story, and it corroborates other stories of the sightings of similar things in the same part of the river, back for the past couple hundred years or so ago. So,
I guess we're just gonna have to trust you on that one.
Exactly. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
If it had done 10 years later, I would have had a cell phone in my pocket and could have just. But I guess that's the nature of sea serpent stories. But as far as I'm concerned, Connie is real.
Awesome. We believe you.
Good, thanks. You're one of the few. No. Some do. Some people believe it.
We're towards the end of our time, and the questions are running out. But one person is asking how to access the recording, and you will be getting an email. Everyone who has signed up for this live stream will get an email with all the links and the recording. It will be posted within the next 24 hours, and that will be to ctriver.org/livestream. I just wanted to ask another question, Wick, if I may.
Sure.
If you could share, how do articles get chosen? You mentioned people could share ideas for articles. Is there a process how they get decided, or?
I would say I'm not in the editorial end of things, but I guess sending an inquiry to estuarymagazine.com would be the way to start the process.
Okay, great. And then if you want to go out with a little tidbit about something new that you're writing now, or what your next article you're planning, would be nice to hear.
Well, the next thing I'm doing for Estuary Magazine is an article on Samuel Colt, who built one of the iconic structures on the Connecticut River, that Blue Onion Dome that you can see as you paddle by or drive by on Interstate 91. And his son, I have a book coming out in October on shipbuilding on the Connecticut River. And his son was a very, very prominent yachtsman who brought his yacht Dauntless up to Essex every fall and established a real presence on the river. So, Samuel Colt went to his wedding on a steamboat down the river from Hartford to Middletown. So what I'm doing is parsing out the connections between Samuel Colt and the Connecticut River. So it's fun for me. And as I say, I have a book coming out in October on shipbuilding on the Connecticut River, primarily down here at the end of it. But if anybody has any interest, I found it was interesting that nobody had really looked at the 20th century in terms of the boats that were being built. So I was able to turn nostalgia into history. So that was fun for me. Awesome.
I'm just typing the link so people can, oh, maybe it's not going to go now. Sorry, I was going to type, I'm typing the link to get to the ctriver.org live stream, but
Sure.
not allowing me to send it. So that will be in the recording, in the follow-up email later.
Okay, great.
So I think that's it for our time today. I just want to thank Wick for sharing your stories and enthusiasm for the river and history and culture and conservation and all the rest with us today. Thank you to Aliki for doing the techno help in the background. And thanks to everybody for coming out, and join us again for the cleanup and for future live streams. You can also check out our events calendar at ctriver.org/events. And we hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Stacy.
My pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Peace.